Welcome to The Bitch in My Brain, the personal growth podcast where we address negative self-talk, build confidence, own our self-worth, and have a good-ass time doing it. Hosted by me, Josie Woods, life coach, entrepreneur, and light chaser. Get ready to embrace self-love and start living in your light. Now let's get after it. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitch in My Brain podcast. My name is Josie. It is such a pleasure to be back with you guys. I know I was MIA for a little bit, and I know that I did ghost you all, so I apologize for that. I did not mean to bring in any toxic, behavior, but there was a reason why I decided to take a little hiatus from the podcast, as well as I didn't necessarily feel called to kind of announce why I decided to take a step back for a little bit. So I'll get into all of that. But when I sat down to record this episode, I came in kind of not empty-minded, but open-minded. There we go. Empty-minded. Some days I'm empty-minded, but today I was open-minded. And I really wanted this episode to just kind of give you guys a pulse on where I'm at and the, big things that I took away from this past year. And it really begins kind of with this message of everything happens for a reason. And that is a very popular saying. And it also is one that can be hard to truly buy into. And I know it can be hard because we go through a lot of struggle. We have a lot of shitty things that happen in life. And it can be hard to be like, why is this shitty thing happening for a reason? Especially in the moment, when we look back, you can obviously, put things together and see maybe how that did, work out. And that's really what I want to focus on today is looking back and reflecting on what we've overcome, because we can get stuck in our struggle. We can get stuck in the victim mentality. And if we stay stuck there, we're never going to be able to truly tap into this idea that I'm constantly evolving and growing, and everything that has been happening is for a bigger purpose, is a lesson to be learned, is a, opportunity or a test. And what I love about that, and really embodying the truth of everything happening for a reason, is I truly believe it makes life more fun. It brings joy to areas that may have, brought pain at one point. I feel like when I reflect back, there are so many times where, I'm thinking of a situation and I can't help but smirk because I'm like, no frickin' way was I supposed to do that so that I could eventually, get here. So I truly love this topic. It is something that is like the grounding force as I move through my life every day, every year. And yeah, it's freaking exciting. So why don't I kind of give you guys a lowdown on this last year and some of the things that happened that have truly moved me into the space that I'm coming into 2026 with. It was an absolute godsend. It brought so many things to my attention, and I definitely think it is going to be a year that I will look back on 20 years from now and be like, wow, what a fucking year. And it really starts off with the fact that my vision for 2025, so this time last year, my vision was for the podcast to blow up and for me to be able to reach a bunch of women and share these important things that can really help, make the world a better place, make your life better and more enjoyable. And as much as I had these plans of how it was going to look and how, what I needed to do, all this,
it didn't go at all the way I planned. And a lot of what happened, I could have never imagined, would happen or go that direction. But I look back and I'm so thankful because, like I said, it brought up a lot of lessons, a lot of things that showed me that I still have blinders on around how things need to be, around the way things need to look. And what really came to the forefront was the amount of control and like death grip I had over the podcast this year, or over like certain things that I wanted to accomplish. And I always thought that I was like super chill, super go with the flow, carefree, all the things. What this has made me realize is I'm actually a control freak. I don't know if it's a mask that I wear that's like carefree, because there are aspects of myself that I'm like, yeah, I do go with the wind. But certain areas in my life, I am very controlling. And it's not necessarily controlling other people, but more so like controlling my actions so that I can then control the outcome. And what I realized, especially looking back at the episodes I recorded, is I was never really letting the podcast breathe. And that started with not really letting myself breathe and be, present when I'm launching this and recording, because underneath the initial and deep intention of wanting to reach women, I also had this underlying intention of, I need to make some fucking money because my student loans, $800 a month, that is not cheap. And, and that was the sort of energy that I was putting around the podcast, was just this kind of scarcity mindset and fear of it not working. And if it doesn't work, then what am I going to do? So, and if you're watching, you can see that like my hands are, gripping, because I felt that I had to control everything. And in order for it to be a success, I needed to, squeeze everything out of it. And I can sense that in some of the episodes I recorded, and it's not coming from a place of like, I was saying the wrong things or, not talking from an authentic place, but there were still aspects of myself that was wearing a mask, or I was not talking about certain things because I didn't know if they would resonate or people would listen, or if they did listen, they'd stop listening. I mean, I could go on and on about all of the kind of fears I had around it. But now I look at those episodes and I'm able to reflect on them, and I can identify the control that I had over each of the episodes. And it really had kind of a bigger impact, because I'm like, well, is the podcast good enough? Because the moment I couldn't truly control the outcome, the amount of listens, anything like that, I made it mean something about me and not being good enough. And it was just, I wasn't in the right energy to push something out like this. And for that, I am very grateful that the podcast didn't blow up. I am very grateful that it had stayed in a very intimate, safe space with some of my listeners, because I was able to really take this time to decide how I wanted to show up and what was mine and what I needed to leave behind, what I wanted to talk about, the people I wanted to reach, without that kind of reflection and looking at all the struggles and obstacles I faced around the podcast. I'm so grateful that nothing happened with it. And it's kind of ironic, because in one way I'm saying, hey, here's my dream of having this podcast. And in the next sentence, I'm like, oh, I am so happy that it didn't blow up, that it wasn't a huge success. So, I kind of smirk in that way of like, everything happens for a reason. And I was not meant to find that type of success last year. I was meant to find deeper success in how I want to approach business, how I want to, feel and say and all the things. And it's like the kind of inaction led to me being able to go into this year having the clarity to take the right actions that feel aligned with me. So yeah, it was kind of funny to reflect back and just realize that like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that this thing didn't pop off. And really where I began kind of this crash course into realizing the alignment of the podcast with where I want to be was I had a family friend reach out to that they need a little bit of help at their chili stand. And then in the winter, it turned into their tree stand. So I decided to work with them because I needed money, like I said, student loans. And I was planning on recording the podcast alongside working for them. And it probably lasted 2 weeks with that intention. And then what I realized, because I ended up working like 6 days a week, pretty much 10 hours a day. And then when it went to the tree stand, I was working 12-hour days. So truthfully, I didn't have the time to record. And this is another moment where I'm like, there was a reason for that. That time, and at the stand, it's very mindless work. It is not, doesn't have to do, anything with strategy or deadlines, nothing like that. It's like I showed up, I worked, and then I was able to leave and not carry anything home with me, which was a godsend. But during those times, there were decent chunks of time where I was able to just sit with myself and reflect and think in like real time. And I realized that I haven't really been giving myself, or I wasn't giving myself that time and space to just be with myself. I feel like before that, I was always just stuck in like a do. And even I look back at like my spiritual practices, and yes, I was allowed to kind of drop in and be present. I don't think I was able to go deep enough because I wasn't truly dedicating the time and the space to do so. And so that's when I, really told myself, okay, I am allowing myself to step away from the podcast and really be in this experience. So I'd spend some days like journaling for 3 hours and just letting it flow and not worrying about whether or not it's a good podcast topic or people would want to hear about it. It was just like, here is everything that's going through me right now. Here's what I'm thinking about. Here are where, my thoughts are taking me even deeper. And that was crucial as I moved through the next few months, because I really took kind of like an observationalist role, especially when I started working with other people at the tree stand. Because when I was at the chili stand, I was pretty much by myself besides on the weekends. So I spent, like I said, a lot of alone time. And that was about kind of 3 months of alone time. And then we went into Christmas tree season. And that's when I was introduced to having coworkers again. And these coworkers were, of every shape, size, background. Like there was not a single common thread through any of these people. And I hadn't really worked in that sort of environment since like my first job working at the Keg. It was a steakhouse. But like even then, there was a very certain type of person that they hired. So this was like the first time I had really experienced being in that mixed of a community. Because like we had, there was one guy that was like fresh out of prison, for grand theft. Good guy, bad decision, making in his 20s. And then we had like a biker chick and, some Gen Z like teenagers. And there was this guy, he was like 72 years old. I absolutely loved him. He was like an Italian meatball sort of, just great people. And what I realized is how much of community I was missing. And that was really surprising to me because I have built a community, especially as I've done self-development work of like-minded people and people who have the same interests and values as me, which is fantastic. We all need a super strong, foundational community that we can rely on and feel safe in. That is, very important. However, I feel like when we are curating these communities, our community, we can become very exclusive. And when that happens, we become very isolated in our community. And that's when we start to move into the echo chambers and talking about kind of the same things. And it can be a place to grow, but it is also easy to become very stagnant in a community that you're very, very comfortable in. Like I said, it's very important that we have those communities. But what this showed me working at this stand was how I need to expand my community and welcome in a bunch of different types of people. And the reason I say that is because stepping into that observationalist view when I was working with other people, I was really able to watch and learn from them. A lot of people were mirrors for me, where I saw myself in them. Some things good, some things not necessarily bad, but some things I wouldn't necessarily, want to keep doing, patterns, behaviors, whatever. And for that, I am incredibly grateful. And one of the biggest things that came over me was watching and interacting with this one woman. And I'll call her V because I don't want to, give away names or anything like that. But she was probably like in her 40s. And the best way to describe her is beautifully odd. I have never met anyone like her. She was kind of quirky, just, you never knew what you were kind of gonna get, but overall, she had a very good energy. But she was kind of unpredictable. And because of that, I watched people treat her differently. And she wasn't mean, she wasn't nasty. She just didn't fit neatly in the societal box that we expect people to be in. And all of these people were strangers pretty much prior to this. So everyone is working with each other for pretty much the first time. And watching the way these people treated her really made me kind of take a deeper look at why, or kind of what the reasoning was besides her not fitting neatly in, to a box. What was the reason why that they were treating her differently? And what I realized was it wasn't that V did anything on like purpose or anything like that. Really what it was is she was just deeply misunderstood. And the people around her, they couldn't necessarily comprehend that someone would act differently and be spontaneous. And don't get me wrong, I had multiple conversations with her where I'm like, what the hell are we even talking about right now? But I saw myself in her because I've also been that person that's unpredictable or too much or, overwhelming. I've been that person. And in those situations, it's not like there was any intent. I wasn't trying to cause harm or annoyance. It was just me showing up naturally. However, externally, people didn't understand why. And my heart really, it broke for her at first because it also triggered, that young child in me that felt those same ways. But it also kind of filled my heart in some way because she was so unapologetic. Not even she filled my heart in some way. She filled my heart because the lesson that I took away from her and the gift that she gave me was the knowing that it's okay to be misunderstood. And we don't have to craft ourselves so that we are understood. And, I've said this on the podcast previously, I want this to be a place where people feel seen, heard, and understood. And that is something that is so deeply woven into the intention of this podcast. But what the box that she opened for me was I no longer need to be understood. I no longer need to feel seen or heard. I want that. I desire that, but it is no longer a necessity for me. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons and gifts that I was meant to have, because now I'm sitting here and I'm approaching this podcast from such a different perspective. I'm approaching my life from such a different perspective. And, it makes me think of even politics. I swear I'm the last liberal standing in, my family, whatever. I disagree with a lot of people politically, and it would really frustrate me if I couldn't comprehend how they can think that, this whole ICE shit is okay, how they can justify it. And it would, infuriate me. And I would get so worked up and angry and frustrated at these other people because I'm like, you're not listening. You're not hearing me. You're not understanding what I'm trying to tell you. And I held that with so much negative energy. And what V taught me was I don't need that response from people. And it's such a freeing thing to discover because I'm like, I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to wear masks. If I'm okay with being misunderstood, then that means I am confident in my authenticity. I am showing up as the realest version because I don't have that fear of judgment. I don't have that need to be accepted. And yeah, it is such a freeing gift and lesson. And for her and this experience of, I would have never thought that I would go from a successful, marketing business to making $15 an hour working 10, 12-hour days. I would have never imagined that for this year. And I look back and it truly is, everything happens for a reason, because I now feel so much more kind of like powerful and excited to live my life and be unapologetic and just like fucking get after it. And, the universe has our back. Like if it's not in our, if a plan doesn't work out, it means that the universe has a different plan. And that plan is better and more magical and successful than we could even fathom as humans. So, to kind of wrap up this episode, I encourage you guys to maybe take a look back at this last year and go in from the perspective of things, not things that you want to change or you would do differently, but looking back at the things that were those small moments that changed the way you viewed things or changed the path that you were on, the risks that you took, just looking at all of the good that has come from the things that didn't work out, from the things that you didn't expect. And it makes life so fun because you can navigate those shitty, gross experiences with grace and gratitude because there's something bigger, there's something better. And that right there is where I find my joy and my ability to smile at things that I may have, frowned at previously. And yeah, I'm so excited to start this year fresh and energized and grateful for everything that's happened in the past, this crazy road, so that I can move forward to the best life, one that I can't even imagine now. But I know when I'm there, I will be so happy everything happened. So this was such a pleasure. I feel so jazzed up. I feel so connected to you guys. And I'm so grateful for those of you who have stuck with me and been a part of this journey and have watched as I have ebbed and flowed and tried new things. And, some episodes you might listen back to and you're like, whoa, that was a different Josie that showed up than that one. And, that's exciting for me. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode spoke to you, and I can't wait to continue to share so much more. If you're feeling called, please subscribe and leave a review so together we can reach even more women who deserve to live their best life. And you can follow me on social at The Bitch in My Brain as I share my journey and life in real time. I can't wait to see you bitches next week. Take care.